Today is 28th October 2020, and we'll start with object-oriented JavaScript concepts. And then we'll do some problems or problems, and then we'll do the React part, and we completed the 3 projects. Today we'll do the 4th project. So in the first project we saw login, logout, register part, and private route. In the project 2 we saw how to insert value from the text box, and project 3 we saw rich text editor. If you have not done all these 3 projects, do it today as early as possible, so that you should be in pace with me. Okay, so right now we are doing one small project, and later on when we have everything ready, then we can build little bigger project by taking small project together. Okay, so that is the idea. Let's start with the object-oriented concepts. We will continue with the closure. So let's start with the closures. So here, yesterday we saw I created a function, then I created another function, and I return this another function. This second function takes argument and return it. And though it returns argument, but whenever the value of argument changes, this return function gives a new value rather than what it got from the initially when it was created. So that means it only remembers the variable scope, and the value is calculated when it is called, like this. When it is called, only at that time value is calculated. Okay, so we'll see few more examples of this closure, so we can understand how the closures work. Let me write down. So we will see closures in a loop. So we are doing closure in a loop. So the one example which I showed, this one, let's try to understand this one first. So here it means function binds to its scope, not to the current variable and their values found in that scope. So that means the function binds to scope. So whatever function we get, it binds the scope. It binds the scope, and a scope is something it got from the parent, and it does not remember the value of argument. So initially I pass 12, it does not remember the 12. When it is called, it goes and see, okay, what is the value of argument in the scope? it is 13. So it returns 13 because it has increased to one value. And when we create it, it only passes the argument, not the value. Value is calculated at runtime when we execute it. So let's look the closure in the loop. So we have a loop. The problem is we have a loop and it runs 3 times. Okay, so for example, I have function f and I create a variable a. This is an array. I created another variable I and I'll go in the loop 3 times. So I'll say var I equal to 0, I is less than 3, I plus plus. So I created a for loop. So we have the loop and it runs 3 times. So while running 3 times, it creates a new function every time. So I have 3 time loop. So I will return 3 function every time. Since I'm returning function, it becomes kind of closure. It creates a new function every time, and this new function is added to the array, and we will return array in the end. So here we run the loop, and each time we return something, a function. This is called closure because it returns the function, and that this function goes to the global space, and that's the reason it is called closure. So I create a function and it will return I. So it's returning this I, and I'm assigning this to this array. So I will say a of I equal to a function which will return I. So whenever I want to run this AI, I can run like this, AI of round bracket. So I can execute this AI to execute this function, and it will give me the I value, whatever I value is there. And in the end, so it's in the end we'll return the array. So we will return this array. I can say return A. Now let me explain this function again. I have A, which is array, which I will return it. I have variable I, and for I equal to 0, I less than 3, I run 3 times, and each time I return the function which will return the value of I, and this I is assigned to AI. And in the end, I return A. So AI is, we have the array with 3 times because we run it 3 times. So A of 0, A of 1, A of 2, there will be 3 values. And expected behavior A should be A of 0. If I run the function first like this, var A equal to F. Since I run the function F and assign the variable A, so A will be returned to this A. So when I run the A, I can run A of 0. Since it is a function, I can execute like this, and I can execute A of 1, and I can execute A of 2. And each time, if we see the function, it is returning I. So expected behavior is that it returns the I. It returns the function which has the value of the I. So now you type in the chat what will be the value of this in the console. If I type this, what will be the value of, since I am returning I and this is a closure, so AI is executing it. So I want to know if I run. So expected behavior is I should get 0 since I am returning I for A0, and for this 1% I said 1 0 1 2 3, and that is expected because since I am returning I for I, that is for 0 I am returning 0, for 1 I am returning 1, for 2 I am returning 2. So expected is 1 here and 2 here. So let's try to run this in the command line in the console and see what we're getting it, whether we're getting correct value or no. So I have function, I have variable I, and for each I create an AI and return the function which will return I. So for 0 I return 0, for 3 I return, for 1 I return 1, for 2 I return 2, and I created this function. Now I create a variable a equal to, I can name it anything, and I call the function. Now I will run a of 0 and I execute it. So you will see it is returning me 3, not the 0 which was expected. And if I return 1, again it's returning 3. If I do 2, again it gives me 3. So every time it is giving me 3 instead of 0, 1, 2. Now we need to understand why we get 3 instead of 0, 1 and 2, and how to make it 0, 1 and 2. That's another task which we have to do. So let's try to understand now. So let's understand what we are doing. We are creating this function and returning this function to AI. That means this function is kind of closure because we are returning the function. When we return the function from inside function to globally to outside global space, it is called closure. Since this function is created inside this function and ultimately we return A, that means ultimately we are returning this function in the global space. That means this is a closure. So the thing is that closures don't remember the value. So what is the problem? Closures don't remember the value. They only remember the reference, and in this case they will remember I. So whenever we create this closure and returning the I is defined in this function f. So whenever the value of I is changed and we call this closure, it will check, oh, what is the value of I in this space, in the space of f. In the space of f, initially I is 0, second time it will go to 1, third time it will go to 2, and when it goes to, I do I plus plus, though it will not go inside this, but the value of I will become 3. Since the value of become 3, whenever I call this function, it is returning I. It will not return me the value of variable when it was created. When it was created, value of I is 0. Okay, so 0 is value of I when it was created, but it does not remember the value. So when I return I, it's not returning actually the 0, it's returning the variable only. But when we execute it, it see, oh, I is in the scope of this f, and this function can access the scope of f. And what is the value of I at the time when I run this one? When I run this one, I has become 3 because of this last I plus plus. So every time it is returning 3. Okay. So the closure don't remember the value, they only remember only the reference. In this case, they will remember I. And so when we execute, after the for loop, I's value become 3. And whenever we call a of 0, okay, a of 0, that means I'm executing it. Whenever I execute it, it will return the I value, and the I value recently is 3. So every time we are getting 3. Is this clear? Why we are getting 3, 3, 3 every time? Because it only referred the I, which is created in the F space. So I value, it will return the I value, which is currently the value of I, and the current value of I is 3. Now how to fix it? Let's try to fix it. So to fix it, we'll write this function again to fix it. Let me do it again. So to fix it, when I return this function, it always return I, and I will be the current value. So we cannot call I. So I is not correct way to call directly in this function, return function. So what we have to do, in the AI, I have to return a function which takes this is a self-invoking function, but this one will be assigned, the result of this one will be assigned to AI. So I create a function and I execute this function by calling round bracket. So I'm executing this function, and whatever the return value of this will be assigned to this one. Since I want the return value as a function, so I will return a new function, and this new function will take this value x. And from where this x coming is? X is coming from the parameter we passed here in this execution. So here it will be for I. So when I run the 0, 0 is passed here, and this 0 will go here as a x, and we return the function with the return x. So AI, when I call AI of 0 and I execute this one, it is actually executing this return function which will return the x. And since the x is the local variable, it has the scope of this function only, and when I pass 0, it comes here 0 and return it back to the AI. So it is not actually taking the value of this I. It is creating a new variable and assigning this new variable x to this AI. And since it's execute immediately, this x is this x0 is attaching to AI. So we are not waiting, we are not really calling the value of I, which changes every time. We attach the local variable local to this function, and we are attaching this immediately to the AI. So when I call this function, it will attach 0 in the first case to AI and 1 in the second case and third in the third case. So it means that instead of calling the closure, we call another function in the closure, and we use that function to. So this x value will be different every time because the parameter we are passing is I, is 0, 1, and 2. So x value will be different every time whenever we execute this function, and so the value of 0, 1, 2 will be different. So if I write down, I'll write down, then you will better understand. Let me write down. Okay, so let's do this one. So what I'm doing, I'm not calling I now. I'm calling the x, and x is something, this one, which is self-invoking, and it executes immediately, and each time it goes with 0, 1, and 2, and so we don't have the I reference here. We are executing the value which is x, and x will be different every time, and so we are getting AI as differently. Now if I do var a equal to f, and if I do a of 0, so it is giving me 0, and then if I do 1, I'm getting 1. If I just return this return of I, it is taking this variable which is the latest one is the 3, so I'm getting 3. But when I do in this way, this I is passed 0, and it goes here as a local variable, and this one is changed every time. So when I return this one, it takes its own scope, and own scope is 0, 1, and 2, which is different. So every time it has a scope of 0, 1, and 2. So it has different scope than what we returned it previously. Previously we were returning I, which has a scope of f, and it was giving me the latest value. But here we have the 3 different scopes, and in 3 different scopes we have 0, 1, and 2 value, and so we are getting 0, 1, and 2. So I will write down to make it clear. So what I am doing here, so here instead of creating a function that returns I, we pass I to another self-executing function. So we pass I to the self-executing function, and for this function, for this self-executing function, for this function, I becomes the local value x, and x has different value, x has a different value every time. So when I pass 0, it goes inside as a 0, so x has a different value every time. So scope of x is, first time it is 0, and the second time when I pass, it is different scope with the 1, and third time when I pass, it has different scope. Previously, the scope was same for all the 3 cases, which is I, which is the scope of f. But here we created a different scope every time, and that's the reason we are getting new value. Okay, so this is the closure one, and this is very important for interview. Always they ask this one in interview to know whether you understand the closure. So they will give you this problem, and they will say what is the output. So you will say 0, 1, and 2, Now you will say, but the output is 333. So they will, if you say 0, 1, 2, they will think that you don't know the closure and they will fail you. But if you say 333 is the answer, then they will ask you to fix it. So to fix it, you have to create a self-executing function and pass the I value in it. So you have to create this function yourself to show him that you fixed it and now the answer is 0, 1 and 2. So go through these two functions, which is very important, and it is asked almost in all interview of the closures. There are few more problems of the closure, and this is the explanation why we get 0, 1 and 2 every time, because we create a local variable x which has nothing to do with the parent scope, and it has its own scope, and its own scope is giving 0, 1 and 2 every time different. So we are getting different value. So this is not, when I create first time, it has one scope. When I create second time, it has another scope which is different from the previous scope. So every time we get different value. Okay, so this is something we did the closure. Regarding the problem, we did this problem already today, this problem, though it was in the closure, so we'll not do a separate thing for the problem today. Because right now, I will be doing closure and problems together, and if we do some problem, then it will be considered it included in this problem. Okay, so we did the closure part, we understood the closure part, and then we did a problem on the closure part. Still, we have to do more problems in closure and understand it little bit more how the closures work, because this is not the only question they ask in interview. I have few more questions which they ask in interview, which we will do tomorrow and day after tomorrow. Okay, so this one was about closure. Okay, now let's take the React. Let's do the React part. So this one was the problem and closure. Okay, let's do the React one. Before doing the React, let me start the pass server. And I'll also start the I'm also starting the React one in the terminal. Okay, so pass server started. Let's go to the okay. So we finished the 3 projects, though every project will be very small and each project will do some purpose. Now let's go to the project 4. And so the project 4 will be the select boxes. We have seen input box, we have seen the rich text editor. Now let's go with the React select. So let's see what React select is. So React select is the utility which gives the different options, multiple or single, and will use this React select to do some of the React select one. Okay, so there are different options. We will only do 2 options. One is for the single and one is for the multiple. So we'll create two kind of components, and a single and a multiple. And rest all you can add whenever you get something in project. We can add this one. Okay, so let's install the React Select. Let's go to get started. So we have to install this React Select. I'll go to the terminal. I'll go to client, I'll go to client folder and I'll say npm install save React Select. So it will install this. By the time it gets installed, let's go and copy all the files of project 3 to the project 4. And in the README, I will go. I have to install React Select for the select box. And here I'll say we are doing select box. So the project 4 is about select box. I'll go to project layout. I'll say project 4 select boxes. And then I'll go to app.js. Instead of 3, I'll call 4. Now, since this is a select box, I have to create a widget for select box also. So let me create a widget for the select box. Maybe I can create a new folder, select boxes, and in the select boxes, or I can rename it to React Select. And in the React Select, I will create a new file called as single.jsx, single select.jsx, and I can call another file multi-select.jsx. So I will only create two examples because either of them will be used mostly in our project. Let's import the React one here. This is single select and this is multiple select. In the single select, let's import select from React Select and same thing. I'll copy in the multi-select. Okay, so we are making two of the components. Okay, so this will be the div. Every time I'll get a props also in single select, and I'll also got props in the multiple select. Okay, next will be here. I'll put the label. What label I want to display? It will be props.title. So what title? And I can give the styling here also. Style equal to. I can create another file also for styling, but right now I'll put it inside here only, inline styling. I can say font weight equal to bold. Okay, same thing I'll copy here in my multi-select. Both are same thing. Uh, only difference will be the multiple select. Maybe I can create only one file and pass the parameter. Okay, let's see. Let's create two and then we can make it one or two. We'll see. Okay, so we got label. Okay, now let's go to the example again. So let's try this one, hard-coded value right now. And then we'll change it to this. Let's take only the select one. I create options. Option should have value and label. And that's what I created, value and label. And let's take this one, select options. I'll put it here. So it's taking the options which is coming from here, but in reality, I will pass it as a props. Okay, right now just for testing, if it is working, I just use this option and pass it here, and we'll call this in our add form. So now in the project 4, I have the add button, add JSX, not add button. So it was previously taking input and rich text area. We don't need it. We need the single select, and it is inside the React select. I will also call the multi-select. Okay, let's call the multi-select. I'll call both the thing. And here, maybe I can, on the single select, I can choose the what to call as color. Let's make it color. And this may be category. Okay, or I can add one more, maybe gender. So I will take 3 fields, color, gender, and categories. I can add more, but for testing, so for the single select, I will use gender and color. For multiple select, I'll use categories. These 3 lines are same. In the handle subbit, I will use the color, and then I'll use the gender. Okay, gender is this one, and third one I'll add one more that is called categories. And I'll change the table name to 3. We are testing add of 3. So these 3 things are done. Now we have to see this handle change, and the handle description is not needed anyhow, because that was actually for the description, and here we don't need it. Maybe I'll delete this handle change, and I'll rename this handle description to handle select. Okay. So here we have 3 actually. So when I get this value like description, whatever user chooses the select value, it will come here. So we will not know which field I am trying to update it. So here I will pass the name also. And for each case it will be different. For first case it will be color. For the second case it will be gender. For third case it will be categories. Okay. Let me do this one. Okay. So instead of description, I will have dynamic value of the name. Okay. So name is there and we pass this one. This is correct. We call the set form value and we update the name with the value. So if I pass gender, it will update the value of gender. Initially, let's make this null. And then let's check. Okay, so I created the handle select. It will take the name and value, and I set the form with the name and value. That is, I set the form values with the name and the value. And if you see, we have whenever user select anything from the options, if user select this one, I have to save this whole object. Otherwise, it will not work when we reload the page or when we use edit. We need to save this whole part, because when I click this select option, it will give me this value, and second case it will give me this value. So I have to save this whole thing. Otherwise, I have to manipulate a lot of other things, which is not feasible now. So let's save this whole part whenever we select this option. So though it's not done, this is just only to see if options are coming. We will change this one in a bit. Now what I'll do, I'll call this single select. I don't need the input. I don't need the rich text one. I need the single select. I'm not passing anything right now because we have already options here. But I need to pass the title. The title will be, I can say, choose color, and I'll pass another one also. Let's pass letter. Let's check how it looks now. So it's calling the fourth. So I change in the app. When I go to add, you will see I can see the choose color. I'm getting some error. So I'm not using React component. It's saying the label is unrecognized in this browser. Okay, so there's spelling mistake. There's spelling mistake. Let's fix that one. It's label. So I will refresh. Okay, now if you see, I'm getting color chocolate, strawberry, the flavors chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, because I put this as here option like this. Okay, I can take this options here, copy this option and pass it as an props. I can say options equal to curly bracket and then I pass this array. So for color I can say blue, red. I will pass another one, single select. Here I will say choose gender and I can say male, female. Okay, let's take now 2 times. It should come 2 times. So one is chuck. Okay. Okay, since I change it here as option, but I have to change it here also. I don't want this hard-coded value. So I'll say props dot options. Okay, so let's do this one. Now I get the color blue and red. I should get red as capital R. Label should be different. Blue and red. And gender I will get male and female. But when I select something, I don't get anything. I need to put it in my variable called as this one, form variables. And for that I created a function called as handle select. So let's take use of this one, handle select. So I will pass here as handle select equal to my handle select. But if I pass handle select, whenever I change it, it will go here as value and not the name. It will go as a value, and each time I need name also. So in reality it will go like this. It will go value. It will not go as a name. So in each case we need name also. So what I'll do in the handle select, I will convert this function. Handle select is a function. I will convert this function using the bind. In the bind, I will make the first parameter as this. So don't worry of this parameter. You can ignore this parameter. So this is just, since I'm using this class, I'm using this function, I'm just passing this. Ignore this part. This is actually meaningless for our case. In our case, this has no meaning. The second parameter is important, and that is called the color. So I will convert this function handle select, and I pass this second parameter. So this parameter is, ignore this one. So consider this as the first parameter. Forget about this one. So consider this as a first parameter, and this parameter will go in place of the first parameter which we have here, that is the name. And this second parameter will come from this select box. It will automatically inject this value inside the value. So name will be given by me, which is the first parameter here, and the value will be given by this select box, and it will come there as a second, this one. We will do bind in more detail when we go into we are doing object-oriented JavaScript also. In that, we have to do the bind in more detail. Just now I just explained you what this is the first parameter and this is the first parameter I'm getting. But in reality, we have to learn more about bind, which we will do at a later time. But for now, for today's use case, you only remember that first parameter, this has no meaning, so I am ignoring this. This has some meaning when we will do different example, but in our case, now it has no meaning. So this is the first parameter, which will pass here as a name, and the value will come from the select box. Same thing. In the second case, I will do handle select. So here I will pass the gender. So this gender will go as a name here, and the second parameter will come from the select box. So just remember this for now. And I can show you here what we are getting. So you can call it handle select, or you can call it as handle change, because in the you can name it anything, whatever you want. But when we go to the single select box, so there we have to use on change one. That's the reason I change it to on change. Here I will say on change equal to, I will call props dot. So since I called on change this function, and this function is defined here as handle change, and since I use bind, so it will take the first parameter from here, and second parameter will come from this select box. So whenever they change it, they generally push the value, and if we don't have the bind, this will go as value here. So whatever value we selected, it will come here like this. But since we want the name also, because we have to save it differently, that's the reason I use a bind and I put the color here, so that every time I should get different. For the color I should get name different. For gender I should get name different. So let me show you now how it works. Let me refresh the page, and initially the color is null, gender is null. When I call the blue, you see the name is coming as a color and value is coming as this whole one, blue. When I change red, name is getting color and value is coming red. When I change the gender, value is coming as this, label is this, and we are also updating in the color and gender. Okay, so this one is there. Let me refresh it again. Okay, so I can now choose and choose this. So I will getting updated one. So do you see this name is coming gender, value is coming this one. Because of the bind, I am getting the value differently. So let me delete this part. So this is about the single select. Let's add the multiple select now. I will copy this part again here in the multiple select. So here I will add few more things. One is called is multi. This is another parameter I will add. And also I will add, let's see in the document, what should we add. So I will go in the multi-select. I will see the source code. I have is multi, name is colors, and I don't need the name now. I need this class name and these two. Let's add these two. Okay, so let's this two, multi is there. Okay, now instead of single select in the add, we will call the multi-select also. The only thing I'll change this to multi-select, and here I will give me the categories. And I'll give this category. So for example, category will be maybe called as teaching, and then maybe I can say activity. I can give different categories. I can give few more classes, events. So I put some categories, and in the handle change I will say categories. Okay, so this one is same as this one. And now let's refresh and see. So I can choose the color, I can choose the gender, I will choose the category. So category can be teaching, another one will be events. I can choose as many as I want. And if you see in the form value, since this is a multiple select, the category is coming as an array, And since I selected 3, 1, I'm getting 3 value, each one with 0, 1, and 2. So this category will be saved as an array, and these will be saved as an object. So these are the single value. Now if I click submit, it inserts into the database because that part we already finished it and we are here. So let's see the database now. So we have the testing at 3, and you will see ACL is updated to this one, whatever we have seen yesterday. This is the color option which I selected. I will keep this like this object only, because when I try to edit it, I need this object which will be pre-filled with the default value. Okay, so gender will be also the object, and categories will be the array. You see, this is the array, this is the object type, and this is the array with different key, the array with a different object, first value, second value, and third value. Let's try to add more again. Red, female, and I'll select activity, events, classes. I can delete also. I'll submit it, refresh it. So this is what we get. We have all 4 here. Okay, so this is how we will be going to save it. I could have saved only this value blue here in this case, but that requires little more modification in the code. And for now, I'm okay in saving the object. But later on, if I think that I need to save only the blue, not this whole object, I can do that. But that needs extra effort, and I don't feel that is correct now to put extra effort to do this simple thing. But if I feel sometimes in a project I need to save only the value, I can do that also. And though I need to do the modification in our code. That I'll not do now. Maybe in some time future I can do that. So what we did, we added single select and multi select, and we created 3 data to see the difference, how we are passing color and gender and category. In real world it will be different. And then what we did, this is a common thing which I explained, and this is common for all our forms. And then we have the handle submit, where we submit the data with the different key value pair and the user who is logged in. And then we call the single select with different option, this single select with different options. And we put the multi select with different options. This handle change is same for all 3. Only thing I pass the name differently in each case. If I go multi-select, I took this example from their site, so no worry about that one. This also I took from their site, like this like this one I took from their website, so not an issue. Thus we create a single select, multiple select. And then there's a submit button which does the things. And once it is saved in the database, I redirect user to the home page. Okay, so this is how we build the select and multi-select. So this is of the project 4. And we are done with the project 4. Let's see if we want to build something, what are the forms we have to use one. Let me see the forms. So one of the form is the Craigslist. So it has this radio button. So we will do this radio button also in future classes. And then we have radio button here again. And then here we have the select box, which we just now built it. So we can use the select box for whatever we did. This is event date when it is there. This is also select box. We can use this also in the event date. And this is simple text box. This is text box with numeric values, so it will go as a 1, 2 like this. This is text box, and this is the description. They made the simple text area, and we have the rich text editor. We will also make simple text area also to make like this. Okay, so I'm just seeing the examples which we can build. Okay, so that's it for today. If you have any question, ask me.